Good morning. The Norwegian Nobel Committee has decided to award the Nobel Peace Prize for 2018 to Denis Mukwege and Nadia Murad for their efforts to end the use of sexual violence as a weapon of war and armed conflict. Both laureates have made a crucial contribution to focusing attention on and combating such war crimes. Denis Mukwege is the helper who has devoted his life to defending these victims. Nadia Murad is the witness who tells of the abuses perpetrated against herself and others. Each of them, in their own way, has helped to give greater visibility to wartime sexual violence so that the perpetrators can be held accountable for their actions. The physician Denis Mukwege has spent large parts of his adult life helping victims of sexual violence in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Since the Panzi Hospital was established in Bukavu in 2008, Dr. Mukwege and his staff have treated thousands of patients who have fallen victims to such assaults. Most of the abuses have been committed in the context of a long-lasting civil war that has cost the lives of more than 6 million Congolese. Denis Mukwege is the foremost, most unifying symbol, both nationally and internationally, of the struggle to end sexual violence in war and armed conflicts. His basic principle is that justice is everyone's business. Men and women, officers and soldiers, local, national and international authorities alike all have a shared responsibility for reporting and combating this type of war crime. The importance of Denis Mukwege's enduring, dedicated and selfless efforts in this field cannot be overrated. He has repeatedly condemned impunity for mass rape and criticized the Congolese government and other countries for not doing enough to stop the use of sexual violence against women as a strategy and a weapon of war. Nadia Murad is herself a victim of war crimes. She refused to accept the social codes that required women to remain silent and ashamed of the abuses to which they had been subjected. She has shown uncommon courage in recounting her own suffering and speaking up on behalf of other victims. Nadia Murad is a member of the Yazidi minority in northern Iraq, where she lived with her family in the remote village of Kocho. In August 2014, the Islamic State, ISIS, launched a brutal, systematic attack on the villages of the Sinjar region, aimed at exterminating the Yazidi population. In Nadia Murad's village, several hundred people were massacred. The younger women, including underage children, were abducted and held as sex slaves. While the captive of the ISIS, Nadia Murad was repeatedly subjected to rape and other abuses. Her assaulters threatened to execute her if she did not convert to their hateful, inhuman version of Islam. Nadia Murad is just one of an estimated 3,000 Yazidi girls and women who were victims of rape and other abuses by the ISIS army. The abuses were systematic and part of a military strategy. Thus, they served as a weapon in the fight against Yazidis and other religious minorities. After a 3-month nightmare, Nadia Murad managed to flee. Following her escape, she chose to speak openly about what she had endured. And in 2016, at the age of just 23, she was named the UN's first Goodwill Ambassador for the dignity of survivors of human trafficking. This year marks a decade since the UN Security Council adopted Resolution 1820, which determined that the use of sexual violence as a weapon of war and armed conflict constitutes both a war crime and a threat to international peace and security. This is also set out in the Rome Statute of 1998, which governs the work of the International Criminal Court. The statute establishes that sexual violence in war and armed conflict is a grave violation of international law. A more peaceful world can only be achieved if women and their fundamental rights and security are recognized and protected in war. This year's Nobel Peace Prize is firmly embedded in the criteria spelled out in Alfred Nobel's will. Denis Mukwege and Nadia Murad have both put their personal security at risk by courageously combating war crimes and seeking justice for victims. They have thereby promoted the fraternity of nations through the application of principles of international law. Thank you very much.
What is the most important message you want to send out to the world by this year's Nobel Peace Prize?
We want to send out a message of awareness that women, who constitute half of the population in most communities, actually are used as a weapon of war, and that they need protection, and that the perpetrators have to be prosecuted and held responsible for their actions. We believe that this is a fundamental prerequisite for lasting peace, to also include the rights and the awareness of women.
Madam Chair, congratulations.
Thank you.
You're supposed to give the prize to the ones who have contributed the most to peace in the last year. Why this prize this year?
This year, Nadia Murad has spoken up on abuses against women. It is a prize where one cannot single out that it is one particular event this year. It has been a continuous development in efforts from the United Nations, efforts by brave individuals, and as we stand here in the year of 2018, we see that Dr. Denis Mukwege and Nadia Murad carry this message in the most efficient way in the previous year.
Has the committee in any way indirectly been inspired also by the Me Too movement and sexual assault on women in general?
Well, I believe there is that Me Too and war crimes is not quite the same thing. But they do, however, have that in common, that it is important for to see the suffering of women, to see the abuses, and to achieve that, it is also important that women leave the concept of shame and speak up.
Have you been in contact with any of the winners, and what were their reactions?
We have tried to contact the winners, and we haven't managed to get through on the phone. If they are watching this, my heartfelt congratulations.
Yes, my name is Bibiana Piena. I represent the Norwegian news agency. Dennis Mukwege has been on the Nobel shortlist for about 10 years. What is the reason he made it this time? And in choosing between 331 candidates, almost record high number, what were the main challenges in finding a unified decision?
Well, first of all, I cannot comment on who has been on the committee's shortlist. We are instructed by the will of Alfred Nobel not to speak about our deliberations. We only communicate to you who has actually been found worthy of receiving the prize each year. And then I can really just reply your question by stating again that taking this subject into consideration, highlighting the importance of the subject, we found that these two individuals, in a most significant way, have actually been vocal on this subject. That is, of course, not to say that there are other individuals, other efforts, who also address this subject. And they also they deserve thanks and recognition. But with this prize, we recognize the two individuals that we believe have been in front of this cause.
Yes, Madam Chair. My name is Anne Lindholm. I work for Radio Norway, or Radio Norge. Sexual violence has been debated a lot over the past year. How important has that been in your decision?
Well, sexual violence has been debated a lot in the past year in the context of, what shall we say, civil society and how men and women interact in our society, and particularly in the workplace, because this is, I understand, more or less a Me Too question. But as I have highlighted in the reasons I already have given, already in the Rome Statutes of 1998, both genocide and crimes against humanity is defined, can take place by using women and sexual abuse, or for that matter, sexual abuse against men as an instrument. So this is not a new concept in international thinking, however, not so very old. The UN has followed up by several resolutions on this area, and one can say it has been a development to abuse against women, sexual abuse against women at wartime is a well-known phenomenon. It's not a phenomenon of our time, but it has been a development to make it an issue of politics and the business of the international community to recognize it and take responsibility for the issue.
Nadia Murad is a member of the Yazidi ethnic group, and it seems like wars that are ethnic are especially violent in a way. Was there ever any plans of or discussions of having a third winner this year from the Rohingyas?
Again, I have to underline, we cannot tell you about our deliberations. This is the conclusion we came to. But the point that you raised, that what we raise here is, we say women are particularly vulnerable to sexual abuse in war. But also belonging to a minority, you are particularly vulnerable in war. So there may be many factors, but what we are addressing by this year's prize is the situation of women in wartime and other armed conflicts.
Any further questions? Doesn't seem so. Okay, then
What are your hopes for an eventual impact of this prize on sexual violence in wars?
When we say the purpose is partly to highlight the awareness of sexual abuse, and the further purpose of that is that nations take responsibility, that communities take responsibility, and that the international community takes responsibility. And what is very important is not that we just say this is criminal behavior, but that we actually act and prosecute the perpetrators, and that incidents are reported. Of course, the final goal is to end the crime and also to end the impunity.
Is it true that Nadia Murad is the second youngest laureate ever?
I believe so. Malala Yousafzai is so far the youngest. Thank you very much. Thank you.